stories. Following a meeting between EU political director Enrique Mora and Iranian chief nuclear negotiator Bagheri Kani, Tehran has agreed to resume nuclear negotiations by the end of November. The extent of damage done by a cyber attack that crippled Iran's petrol stations nationwide is evidently greater than initially acknowledged. Head of Iran's civil defense organization claims that the Islamic Republic had a hand, quote, in toppling President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Iran pledged in talks with the European Union that it would aim to resume negotiations by the end of November. Following a meeting between EU political director Enrique Mora and Iranian chief nuclear negotiator Deputy Foreign Minister Bagheri Kani, the latter published a statement on his Twitter account asserting that an agreement was reached to start negotiations by the end of next month and that an exact date would be announced in the course of next week. Despite Kani's statement, however, in a press briefing in the Iranian capital Tehran, Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian asserted that nothing has yet been agreed upon, and only after consultations with the chief Iranian negotiator, a final decision will be made.
در خصوص گفتگوهای امروز در بروکسل ما بعد از اینکه ارزیابی خودمون رو با آقای دکتر باقری امشب داشته باشیم تصمیم میگیریم که آیا در بروکسل زمان شروع مذاکره با 4+1 رو اعلام کنیم یا در بازگشت ایشون به تهران نیازمند مشورت‌های بیشتر خواهیم بود.
Tehran's top diplomat went on to reiterate the Ayatollah regime's repeated sentiments, as part of which it insists that the United States should show its seriousness to the Islamic Republic regarding the benefits that would emerge prior to a mutual return to compliance.
ما خیلی مشتاق بازگشت آمریکا به برجام به صرف بازگشت نیستیم. مهم این هست که نتیجه این بازگشت آیا به نفع جمهوری اسلامی ایران خواهد بود یا نه؟ آیا در راستای لغو تحریم‌ها باز خواهد گشت یا در راستای ایجاد محدودیت‌های جدید؟ شخصاً معتقدم اگر آقای بایدن اراده جدی داره این اراده رو باید به منصه ظهور برسونه و ما بتوانیم باور کنیم که واقعاً آمریکایی‌ها جدی هستند در لغو تحریم‌ها.
Following the Iranian negotiators' announcement, which followed with mixed signals on Tehran's genuine intentions by the foreign minister, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki reiterated that the United States remained committed to pursue the path of diplomacy based on the framing of compliance for compliance.
Our commitment remains pursuing a diplomatic path forward. I would leave it to the negotiators to determine when the next round of discussions will be. Our framing continues to be compliance for compliance, and we'll leave it up to the Europeans and our negotiators to determine when the next step would be.
Prior to Psaki's remarks, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan was asked at what stage will the White House decide that Iran has passed the point of no return, and when does the United States decide on the necessity to enact the so-called Plan B, to which he emphasized that while Washington is alarmed by Tehran's nuclear activities, it remains convinced that there still is an opportunity to resolve the matter diplomatically.
I'm not fixing a date on that. Obviously, we closely monitor the progress in Iran's nuclear program. We are alarmed and concerned by the steps that they have taken since they left the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Within the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, there were constraints on that program that were significant and substantial. We had a lid on that program. Now we do not because we don't have that deal. So our first and highest priority is to get back to the table and get back to a deal that does, in fact, place a lid on Iran's nuclear program. I'm not going to negotiate from the podium, but I will say that part of the reason the President wants to have the chance to coordinate closely with our European partners, particularly with the E3, who are part of the talks, is for us to have a united front after the 4 years of division on the Iran policy in the last administration. And we will be sending clear messages to the Iranians, as we have been doing over the course of the past few months, that this window is not unlimited, that we do need to see a return to diplomacy and progress at the diplomatic table, and that we, of course, retain all other options to be able to deal with this program as necessary. But beyond that, I'm not going to comment further because we believe there still is an opportunity to resolve this diplomatically.
Turning to the Iranian capital Tehran, where Chief of Iran's Civil Defense Organization, Brigadier General Gholam Reza Jalali, attributed responsibility to Israel for the cyber attack that crippled the Islamic Republic's petrol station, asserting unequivocally, quote, "The Zionists are behind the severe disruptions." Nevertheless, in a press briefing, General Jalali insisted that the Islamic Republic is capable of confronting threats from both Israel and the United States, proclaiming further that Iran had a hand in what he referred to as the toppling of both President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, respectively.
ما دچار یک ترکیبی از تهدیدات شدیم. خب امروز امریکایی‌ها و اسرائیلی‌ها رژیم صهیونیستی شاید میشه گفت که در ضعیف‌ترین شرایط ممکن هستند و آسیب‌پذیرترین شرایط. از یه طرف انسجام درونی این کشورها به دلایلی که دوستان میدونن به هم خورده و ما شاهد شکست دولت ترامپ و شکست دولت نتانیاهو در رژیم صهیونیستی و در امریکا بودیم که نتیجهش در واقع نتیجه این دو شکست بخشی از مقابله فشار حداکثری از علیه جمهوری اسلامی بوده و درگیری و مقابله‌ای که با ما داشتن.
It is important to note that in contrast to General Jalali's unequivocal attribution to Israel, Iran's Supreme Council of Cyberspace Secretary Abdul Hassan Firozabadi merely confirmed that a state actor was most probably behind the cyber attack, yet stopped short from voicing any concrete accusations.
پیچیدگی حمله و گستردگی حمله و همزمانش با یه سری حملات دیگری که صورت گرفته نشون میده که کشور خارجی در این کار دست داشت.
Separately, Iranian Oil Minister Javad Alji sought to reassure neighboring countries that the Islamic Republic's stockpile of petrol gas is both plentiful and accessible, and that shipments would resume within the coming weeks, in what appears to confirm that the cyber attack was far more disruptive than initially confirmed.
ذخایر سوخت بنزین ما به وفور هست، همچنین که انشالله از هفته‌های آتی ما دوباره صادرات بنزین رو به کشورهای همسایه خواهیم داشت.
Meanwhile, Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi toured a gas station in Tehran where he was provided with a situation assessment from the ground. Subsequently, the Iranian leader underscored the need to prepare for future such attacks in the cybersphere.
این هوشیاری رو و آمادگی رو همواره باید داشته باشید در مقابل حملات احتمالی که نه فقط در وزارت نفت بلکه در وزارت خونه‌های دیگه، در سیستم‌های دیگه که ما داریم در کشور، حتما باید این آمادگی لازم باشه که هر گونه حمله رو بتونن دفع کنن و به هیچ عنوان اجازه ندن که دشمنان با یک کار نرم افزاری بتونن در زندگی مردم اخلال ایجاد کنن.
In other, yet related news, on the very day when unidentified actors launched a cyber attack that crippled Iran's petrol stations nationwide, the IDF held a ceremony marking a transfer of command of the chief of the Spectrum of Cyber Directorate, during which IDF Chief of General Staff Lieutenant General Aviv Kochavi presented the brigade with an honorary certificate of appreciation for building capabilities and realizing them in a new and developing dimension of combat. Separately, outgoing commander of the brigade, Brigadier General Dror Kashti, praised his troops for their dedication to the security of the Jewish state, saying, "You worked day and night in the spectrum of cyber warfare that diminished the enemy's capabilities and turned the spectrum into a real battlefield." General Kashti noted further, "You acted covertly and professionally from the operation rooms, fortified the walls, and turned every stone to exact a heavy and significant price from the enemy. You fought against an active and developing rival system. You shaped the rules of the game in the cyber dimension." It is worth mentioning that according to a report by Microsoft, Israel is listed as the 7th most targeted country in the world for cyber attacks. The report further noted that during 2020 alone, the number of cyber attacks by Iran against Israel in the cybersphere quadrupled. The report also mentioned that the Islamic Republic of Iran has stepped up cyber attacks against the United States and member states of the European Union.